Here's New South Wales Premier with their COVID update.
To the more than 17,000 people who got tested overnight, but can I please stress that we do need that number to go higher, and can I please ask for people to come forward and get tested? It is so important that that occurs. Overnight we had 18 cases of community transmission. 9 of these were in the Avalon cluster and people were already in isolation, so they were close contacts and already in isolation. That's 9 cases. 6 of those related to the one case that we mentioned yesterday in the Inner West. The health experts are calling it the Croyden cluster. All 6 are members of the same family, extended family group, and we anticipate, because of the nature of that extended family's movements, that there will be more cases from that cluster. We want to thank the family members and the extended family for their cooperation. They've been absolutely cooperative and we're deeply grateful for that. But that Croyden cluster is now at 6, and we do appreciate there'll be additional cases reported tomorrow from that extended family group. And we also have 3 cases technically under investigation. One is linked to someone who was in the Northern Beaches, and the other 2 cases are in Wollongong, linked to those Wollongong cases. So as you see, we've seen the proliferation of cases outside the Northern Beaches overnight. And in particular, can I stress at this time how important it is, firstly, to come forward and get tested if you have the mildest symptoms. It was wonderful to see so many people come forward before Christmas in anticipation of visiting relatives and loved ones, and those numbers stayed high for a number of days. We need to get the testing rates higher to make sure we have confidence that we have eliminated all those additional chains of transmission that may exist out in the community. In particular, the Croyden cluster is of concern because there are no direct links at this stage. The health experts are working overtime with all extended family members who are involved to make sure that that cluster, all contact details, all venues and movements of that extended family are made apparent so that we can identify all the close contacts. In view of this, we have decided to make some further decisions regarding New Year's Eve. All households in Greater Sydney, that includes Wollongong, the Central Coast, Nepean and Blue Mountains, as well as the southern part of the Northern Beaches, so the southern zone of the Northern Beaches, will now be limited to 5 people per household on New Year's Eve. Obviously, in the Northern Beaches, you cannot welcome anybody to your home that's outside your zone. In Greater Sydney, we don't want welcoming anyone to their home more than 5 people. And as I said, Greater Sydney includes Wollongong, Central Coast, Nepean, Blue Mountains in terms of the definitions we're using. Now, the Croyden cluster demonstrates what happens when there are larger family gatherings and how it only takes one person in that family gathering to give it to everybody else in the family. And we want to see a reduction of that. We don't want New Year's Eve to be the cause of a super spreader. Had circumstances been different, we may have acted differently, but we don't want New Year's Eve to be a situation where undetected cases, people who may be in the very early stages of the disease and not know they've got it, not know they're infectious, unintentionally give it to those closest to them and give it to those people in their household, but also people into their household. I mean, our preferred advice is that people just stay home for New Year's Eve, but if you must have people over, don't have more than 5. And please make sure you have adequate social distancing, good ventilation, all those things Dr. Chan and the health experts talk about. If you are going to welcome people into your home, make sure there's good social distancing, good hand sanitisation and good ventilation in your home. And it's always best to sit outside rather than inside. I appreciate the weather's not the best, but those arrangements are much safer. We also want to announce that we are restricting the number of outdoor gatherings from 50 people in Greater Sydney down to 30. So as we'd said previously, it is safer to be outdoors, whether it's a picnic, a barbecue, but please maintain your social distancing and please make sure that you at all times appreciate that there could be cases of the virus that we haven't captured, and certainly the Croyden cluster does give us concern because until there's an established link between an existing case or an existing venue or there's some crossover, that is of concern to us, which is why we've acted immediately on receipt of that advice to restrict further what happens on New Year's Eve. Our advice to the Northern Beaches community remains the same. We will be providing an update on the 2nd of January on what happens to the northern part of the Northern Beaches as well as the southern part of the Northern Beaches. And obviously we've already said to the northern part of the Northern Beaches, your stay-at-home rules will stay in place till the 9th of January, and that won't change. But for the southern part of the Northern Beaches, as you see today, the threat there is almost the same as the threat that exists in Greater Sydney. So we can anticipate that there'll be additional provision for those in the southern part of the Northern Beaches to be incorporated into what will happen in Greater Sydney. Our anticipation is that they will be part of what happens in Greater Sydney from the 3rd of January, but we won't confirm that until the 2nd, just to give people hope that they will be considered the same as what other parts of Sydney will be. However, again, we reserve our right to look at the data and to make sure there aren't any cases that we're concerned with that suddenly emerge in that part of the Northern Beaches. So if I can stress again, the strongest message to everybody across New South Wales, no matter where you are, is please limit your activity and your mobility. We appreciate it's a time of year when people feel they need to be with others, but please try and limit what you do. Please stay at home or make sure you are in a safe setting. If you're going to welcome people into your home, no more than 5 in Greater Sydney. And please make sure even then that you exhibit good COVID-safe practices. If anybody has the mildest of symptoms, please get tested and stay at home until you're given the advice. And also please make sure that if anyone in your family has any symptoms, please ask them not to attend a gathering. Please ask them to stay at home. Please ask them to get a test and stay at home. And of course, a special message to those most vulnerable. If any of us are interacting with those most vulnerable in our community, those who are older or have another illness, we need to be extra COVID safe. Now, New South Wales always takes a precautionary response, and we are being very precautionary in this instance. We know outdoor settings are much safer than indoor settings. We know from the Croyden cluster that the greatest chance you have of getting the disease is from someone you know in a household setting or someone you know in a particular venue, and that's always the highest risk. We're also asking to make sure that if you do have a booking in an established restaurant or a hospitality venue, that you've already downloaded the Service New South Wales app to make it easy when you go in and out. We don't want crowds congregating or lining up, and that of course all businesses should have by now the Service New South Wales app well and truly on their system to make sure there's accuracy if we need to contact trace, and to make sure that it's easier for patrons when they're moving in and out of those venues. So again, just to be clear, for New Year's Eve and until further notice, and I stress not just for New Year's Eve but until further notice, everybody in Greater Sydney, Wollongong, the Central Coast, Nepean Blue Mountains area won't be able to have more than 5 people into their home, and that's until further notice. Also that outdoor gatherings will be reduced from 50 to 30, but can I stress it's still important not to have convergence of those outdoor venues, so outdoor gatherings I should say. So even though we've said you can have an outdoor gathering of 30 with good social distancing, we don't want to see those groups of 30 converge because that is a big health risk. So we're asking people to demonstrate common sense, and we're also asking people to respond to the information we've provided this morning. And again, I want to stress to the community of the Northern Beaches, thank you for your patience. So come the 2nd of January, we'll be able to give the southern part of the Northern Beaches, the southern zone, greater advice and confirmation of how they'll be provided advice moving forward, and the stay at home for the northern part of the Northern Beaches will be in place until the 9th of January. I'll now ask Dr Chant to provide her update and then we'll take any questions. But can I stress again the importance of getting tested? Dr Chant will say it about 10 times as well in her messaging. We need people with the mildest of symptoms to come forward and get tested, and we thank in particular that one particular family member who came forward and got tested, and then we were able to identify the other cases, because it might take days, if ever, before you demonstrate those symptoms. It's really important, or the full-blown disease, it's really important to come forward as soon as you experience or feel the mildest of symptoms.